Hello. Well, I'm back here with Kaitlyn to talk about hacking your router. However, first, you got information about the ozone.
Yes, unfortunately, the ozone is in trouble again, as it typically tends to be.
I heard it actually got better recently.
It did. However, that was due to CFLs and restrictions against making devices with CFLs. There are other ways we can destroy the ozone, so don't worry, it's still coming. Space.com has an article written by Teresa Poltarova talking about pollution from rockets. So historically, rockets have been a minuscule amount of pollution. In fact, a lot of traditional rockets launched using hydrogen and oxygen fuels. So it basically burns raw hydrogen and then exhausts water. So it's ridiculously environmentally friendly. However, that's not the case for all rockets. Some rockets burn, for example, there are solid fuel rockets that produce a lot of soot. There's also a lot of rockets that produce a lot of ozone damaging chemicals. Hydrazine, for example, is very commonly used in rocketry. And so, and once again, rocket launches are so rare that if you want to pollute all you want, I mean, go for it, because it's just a drop in the bucket compared to something like aviation, which uses hundreds of times more fuel each year than all the rocket launches put together, even though rocket launches go through like gallons of fuel each second. However, the rise of private industry going into space, like SpaceX and Blue Origin, is increasing the number of rocket launches. And so Earth scientists over at NOAA are looking at how this is going to affect pollution levels in the Earth's upper atmosphere. And it turns out this is not good. There's going to, well, the rocket launches, as if we were to continue rocket launches as is and just increase the number of rockets, it would increase global warming and potentially damage the ozone layer again. And so there's an effort to find a more environmentally friendly way to clean the exhaust from rockets. Most modern rockets, especially from like SpaceX, which has to land afterwards, do not use the hydrogen oxygen fuel mixture that produces water vapor. It has to be much more reliable than that. So there's a push to make these more environmentally friendly. The problem, of course, is that rocket launches are very expensive, and there's a huge incentive to keep the costs down. And if you are going to make the rocket also environmentally friendly, that's a huge burden on the engineers. And it potentially could make rocket launches much more expensive again. So,
just like every other industry.
Yep.
All right.
I would imagine more so for rockets, because with rockets, with most industries, they do use some sort of fuel, like a fossil fuel or something, but they kind of go through it gradually over time, but they just do it on a large scale. Rockets just guzzle and guzzle and guzzle fuel, gallons and gallons at a time, tons of fuel per launch. I mean, it is ridiculous.
I'm surprised at what you said, that rockets don't compare to commercial aviation, because I remember, I think, a scientific report, American report from 40 years ago, that said that every single moonshot contributed like 0.1% of the total pollution on Earth, which made it sound like we really should knock it off because it was creating so much pollution that it was really a large problem.
Right. I mean, it could be if we increase the number of rockets. So the environment, so I'll read from the article right here. Let me pull it up. The environmental impacts of the rocket launches have been largely overlooked. Many experts have claimed that the amount of pollution generated by space missions is negligible compared to other sources of pollution. For example, within 1 year, the aviation industry alone burns about 100 times more fuel than all rocket launches around the world. So,
well, yeah, but you're saying the rocket launch fuel is worse, right?
It can be, and it goes higher too. So it puts it directly in the upper atmosphere.
Yeah, so that might still not be good even if at that level.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, there's the FCC. It says it has closed the loophole that robocalls use to evade blocking. And I was very interested in this, an article in Ars Technica by John Brodkin that didn't go into great details, but it explained the name of the defense, which is stir/shaken, the first I've heard of it. And the point of this is it would verify caller ID, which is a great idea because so many nasty attacks depend on forging a caller ID. Robocallers do it so they can pay people to call you. And if you call back, you go somewhere else. And I know swatters do it to trick the police into raiding the wrong house. And I didn't know this was happening, but there's the STIR protocol for voice over IP and the Shaken protocol for SS7, both used to verify how reliable the caller ID is. And then you can choose on your call forwarding device to set it for how much reliability you'd like to have. So it does give you an ability to block stuff that lies about its caller ID, which I think is wonderful. So that's just being rolled out now. And right now it's only the larger call carriers that have it. So spammers just moved to the small ones that don't have it yet, but they will be requiring everybody to have it by 2023. So soon it may lower the number of robocalls or force them to be more, develop a new technical trick for the robocalls. So that would be good. And back to Kaitlyn, who has a problem with the blockchain.
I know, imagine that. So the Pentagon apparently has some, well, not me personally, but the Pentagon apparently has some concerns about the blockchain. This is an article on Tech Republic by Ray Fernandez. And essentially DARPA, which is the Defense Department's research arm, and they are responsible for creating the internet. They're really awesome. They decided to take a look at the blockchain and see just how secure it is. Now, blockchain supporters say the blockchain is secure. It's more secure than anything we've ever seen before. And of course, DARPA is very interested in this for military applications. And so they took a look at it, and it turns out not so much. Those of us doing security on the blockchain know firsthand that, of course, the blockchain is not secure. One of the big things, of course, is that a lot of people using the blockchain are running insecure and out-of-date software. And you really need every part of the blockchain to be running, that up-to-date software. And if you're not running up-to-date software, and if every piece of it is not up to spec, you neither have a secure nor even decentralized platform, which is what they're pushing for. So, and that's basically it. It's definitely not as secure as we thought. And it's really surprising too, because you look at some of these blockchain contract languages like Solidity, and it's like, what were they thinking from a security standpoint? People's money is on this blockchain.
Yes.
And it's just a terribly designed language. And decentralizing things, it turns out, is much harder than one would imagine. And actually making things fully decentralized is a real challenge, and one that the blockchain has not fully, figured out yet.
Well, yeah, but I mean, to be fair, I think it's like any other technology. It's still young. It is the bizarre thing about the crypto space is people throw billions of dollars in junk that is just a couple of years old and in like a pre-beta test level of maturity because they're wildcat speculators.
Yeah, I mean, the funny thing about the blockchain is I think it has possibilities, just not in terms of money, that everyone wants it to be, the Bitcoin and everything like that. I think money is still better held and better regulated through, traditional money markets, through the, Federal Trade Commission, et cetera.
Well, I think that's the majority opinion, although I think Bitcoin has some justification for its existence.
Maybe, but when I look at technologies like the blockchain, I'm thinking, we could just have a public ledger, and this would be great for public service things. Things are not necessarily profitable, but it could be useful. You could have when you have a public meeting or at your city hall, you could put the transcript, on the blockchain, and no one can alter it, stuff like that. I mean, there's so many good ideas for the blockchain, but no one wants to do it because there's no real money. And the ridiculous idea, which is to throw our money on the blockchain, which is insecure and a bad idea, is the one that takes off because people just want to get rich off this technology, which is kind of silly.
Well, I like people that compare it to the early days of the internet. First, you have what's technically possible, and then you have what's fun, and much, much later, people make business models that make any sense.
At the beginning of the internet, it was pretty obvious what it could do. And like I said, I'm telling you right now what, really good ideas for the blockchain. Like I said, public service type technologies. But putting our money on the blockchain is just, I don't know. It just seems like the not a very good application of the technology, in my opinion.
It comes from people that do not trust the way the government handles our currency. And I've got a lot of sympathy for that.
I do too. However, I trust the government more than I do scammers and random people on the street trying to cheat me out of money.
That's true. But I think Bitcoin, the only point of Bitcoin is to make a currency that the government cannot devalue. And in that sense, I think it succeeded.
It devalues itself.
Well, I'm not sure Bitcoin does. The others do.
Didn't Bitcoin just crash as much as the others recently?
Oh, sure. Everything crashed. And so Bitcoin was not the hedge against this kind of inflation. That's true. But the quantity of Bitcoin was not changed, and the quantity of dollars was greatly changed. So from a fundamentals point of view, Bitcoin is harder money. And that seems like a pretty good argument to me. But we'll see.
All right.
That's why I talk to my friends about this. In the short run, Bitcoin has been a bad investment, but I think in the long run, it'll be a good one. But you have to hold it for 4 or 10 years. Anyway, I got a lot more crypto news. There's lots happening. Intel has finally announced a special ASIC crypto miner, which they say is 1,000 times faster at SHA-256 based mining than video cards. So this is kind of hilarious in that they're trying to sell it when all the miners are just giving up and selling their video cards anyway. So there's probably no market for it. But it might free up the video cards for gamers again, if it's actually that much better, and improve profitability of mining and make it worth doing again. OpenSea had a major breach, losing all the email messages so people can phish people for their NFTs, which is extremely effective because NFT buyers seem to be very naive about security. And there's an interesting opinion article I read. I was going to hate it, and then I didn't hate it, in Newsweek by Kaitlyn saying the crypto crash was caused by fraudsters and regulators. And I was pretty convinced. The fraudsters we all know about. People ran these rackets where they would tell you the money was being invested safely, but it was being invested in a high-risk asset, and then they lost it all. But the regulators, she said, caused this by not regulating crypto, which is, I think, entirely correct. It's been obvious for years that crypto is full of fraud. There's no reserve requirement. There's no financial disclosures. And the regulators did not figure that out and set up regulations. And there wasn't any safe crypto to invest in. So that's fair enough. But I mean, I think everyone now realizes that the crash of the crypto market is so bad that they do need to have traditional bank regulations applying to cryptocurrencies, or at least securities regulations. And Compass Mining, which I've heard advertising a lot, you can join a pool and rent a miner. They are, their CEO and their CFO resigned. There are rumors that their financial solvency is shot and that they haven't paid their electric and electricity bill, which they deny. But I'd say when your CEO and your CFO resign, that's a pretty bad indicator of the security of your business. And it makes total sense because miners are abandoning the business, selling their graphics cards and giving up. And that's all these people do is mine. And mining has fallen off a cliff, like everything else in crypto. The FBI has added Crypto Queen to the 10 most wanted fugitives. She stole $4 billion. And this one, you can't blame the blockchain for. She sold the cryptocurrency OneCoin, and you would pay her money and she would send you OneCoins, but there was in fact no blockchain at all. It was just total fraud. She would just tell you had some OneCoin and send you statements saying it's going up, and there was no structure at all behind it. And she just took the money and fled. And they're hunting for her, but now she's one of the 10 most wanted fugitives. And CoinFlex was supposed to, one of the many troubled Bitcoin exchanges, I think, was supposed to resume withdrawals yesterday, but they said, oh, we cannot let you withdraw your money yet. We're still working on that. And, I think they're going to go down. Now, I've seen a lot of rumors that Tether and Coinbase are going down, but I haven't seen any real strong evidence of that yet. If Coinbase went down, I think that would really make this crash even worse, but it hasn't gone down yet. And in fact, this is interesting. Coinbase is selling geo-tracking data to ICE and government agencies. In fact, they are selling them a product from Coinbase that they can use to track payments through the blockchain to detect fraudsters and enforce the law there. And Coinbase says, if you want to commit crime on the blockchain, we are not here to help you. They claim they do not give them access, however, to internal Coinbase customer data through that tool, although they do hand it over to tax regulators for accounts with trades greater than $10,000, which they have announced a couple of years ago. So this is why I like Coinbase. Coinbase is trying to be the honest broker. They're trying to be the broker for people that want to use crypto, but do not want to commit crimes. And there may be no way to survive with such a business, but it does seem like the right business to be in. And they often complain about the fact that they try hard to obey regulations, even when the regulations are unfair and make no sense. And their competitors just break the law with no consequence, which puts them at a disadvantage. But I'd like to think in the long run, Coinbase will win out, but we're going to see. Anyway, that's the latest madness of crypto. And now we can go back to Kaitlyn with the headline story, hacking the routers.
Yeah, no, this malware is pretty awesome, I think. Ars Technica has an article written by, it is by Dan Godin, who I believe we've mentioned before on our podcast. So what's going on? A new piece of malware is essentially running a multi-stage attack against everything on your network, all the things, starting with the router. So this malware attacks small office or home office routers made by companies like Asus and similar, small budget routers. And it's designed to run on MIPS architecture, which is very rare. Most malware is not designed to run on MIPS. In fact, the only thing I've ever found MIPS in was our routers and the Nintendo 64. Other than that, I've never seen MIPS in anything else. Supposedly, you can get servers or something with MIPS, but it's not a very common architecture. The crux of this malware is called ZooRat. It runs on MIPS, and it gets pushed onto unpatched routers. Now, the article is not clear about what kind of issues allow it to get put on those routers. I imagine default passwords are probably a strong contender. There might also be some other bugs. But anyway, so ZooRat gets on there. And so what does ZooRat do? Well, it can't, since it's running on the router, it has access to all your traffic, including all your DNS requests, etc. So it can run a man-in-the-middle attack against things like HTTP and DNS. And so when you go to Google, you go to gorgle.com, the attacker's version of Google. And then they do then they hijack that session and apparently somehow get Windows malware onto your machine. They sort of, I guess, assume that you're running Windows, which is a good assumption to make. And it installs, CBeacon, GoBeacon, and Cobalt Strike. So all the things. Just get on there, please. And then once all that's on there, it pivots around your LAN to other devices. So it's multi-stage, multi-device, multi-platform malware that all works together to infect your systems. And let's see, it says, there's a quote in the article, Black Lotus Labs visibility indicates ZooRat, and the corresponding activity represents a highly targeted campaign against US and Western European organizations that blend in with your typical network traffic through obfuscated multi-language C2 infrastructure, likely aligned with the multiple phases of malware infection. Yeah, if you're living in sort of in a Western nation, US or Western Europe, you're at risk for getting infected with this ZooRat malware. So have fun.
And there's no way to detect it, I guess, on the router.
Not that I know of yet.
Yeah, I wouldn't think. I saw they said a reboot will clear off your router, but the problem is it's infected your other devices by then.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So,
Yeah.
and of course, if you reboot it, it's probably still vulnerable. So it'll
Right.
just get reinfected again.
That's right. All right. And the last one I've got is California gun owners. This one's interesting. There's official articles, and then there's a tweet from somebody with a video makes it look worse. Information about registered people who are registered in the state of California to carry a concealed handgun. They get put on some kind of list from gun control, and that entire list was made public. And this was not an accidental breach. This appeared to be a deliberate act. Rob Bonta, who is the California Attorney General, posted a page to inform people about guns in California and just connected to the spreadsheet that listed all the information about all the gun owners. Pretty horrible stuff. And they left it up for about an hour. The name, date of birth, gender, race, driver's license number, address, and criminal history of everybody allowed to carry a handgun in California was just apparently deliberately published on the internet for about an hour before somebody figured out, are you insane? You can't do that. And so I think there will be some consequences. This looks like it is not a hack. It's just a deliberate act by somebody who has no clue about the law. So the Second Amendment gun owner type people are pretty upset about this, and I can't blame them. And I say you really shouldn't tell the government anything. You can't trust them with anything. And yeah, they've kind of got a point. Like I say, I have some sympathy for people say you can't trust the government with your money either. So anyway, that appears to have happened. And I think we'll be hearing a lot more about that as the chips continue to fall. All right. Well, I wanted to mention one other thing I saw on Twitter. There's not a real article of it yet, but somebody showed a USB-C charger for a device. Apparently, USB-C is supposed to first handshake with your device and ask it how much power do you want, and then adjust the level. But somebody's selling USB-C device with a USB-C cord that just spits out 20 volts without asking, because that's what that particular device needs. So it will burn out your other devices. If you plug that cable in the port, it'll fit. Now that's rude.
But it is technically USB-C.
Well, I would argue it is not compliant with the USB-C standard in its entirety.
Show me a one USB cable that's fully USB-C compliant with all devices that use USB-C.
I think you ought to be able to sue them for making something that just tempts you into blowing up your stuff.
Sam, I've seen USB type A devices like to micro USB.
Yeah.
That spit out 20 volts or 12 volts.
Really?
Yeah. A 12 volt adapter to USB A.
Well, that's not good either. Okay.
Yes. This is not the first time this has happened. And it is.
Did they get sued? They should.
No. I mean, this is very common. The standards are just recommended standards for these cables. Manufacturers are not required to be compliant whatsoever. I have a drawer full of USB cables that cannot carry data. Now, granted, in that case, it doesn't destroy your device. It just makes you wonder what's going on with your device when you plug it in and it doesn't work. But I have a drawer full of non-compliant USB-A cables, and that's just 4 wires.
When I was a young man, I had knee surgery, and I was newly married, and I wanted to play the TV in the back room where I was lying in the bed, and I didn't have enough. It was cable TV, and I didn't have enough cables to get there, so I used alligator clips and ran it through an extension cord and got the signal to the back room. But then when I left to go to work, my wife plugged that cable in the wall, but was a power cord, which broke 120 volts AC through the tuner in the television and blew it up. And when I took the television in for repair, the guy said, "What happened? Did lightning hit the antenna?" It's the same kind of thing, using a cord for the wrong voltage is evil.
Yes. Well, I mean, I've done something similar, except that the TV didn't have an antenna. So I fashioned one out of extension cords. But yeah, that can be really dangerous because, of course, if someone doesn't know what you're doing, they just see an unplugged cord somewhere, that can just send the voltage right up to your TV.
I think a lot of security flaws come this way. You do something non-standard and then it gets into other hands and they don't understand it.
Right. Right. So anyway, just so people are clear, when your device turns on, it expects to see 5 volts. Nothing more, nothing less out of USB at all times. Now, USB-C does have a power delivery system that it can then request that that the device can receive like 12 volts or 20 volts at a certain amount of amperage if the device delivering the power can deliver that power. If you plug in 20 volts just directly when you turn it on, it's just going to fry the circuitry.
Yep. Okay. All right. Well, that's it for this one. And we'll be back on Tuesday.